Hello.
Hi everyone, it's Sunday, it's Mother's Day. I hope everyone has wished their mom a happy Mother's Day, because without them, I think a lot of us, we would not be here in the first place. But they definitely do a lot for us. So happy Mother's Day to everyone, to all those wonderful moms out there.
Yeah. Happy Mother's Day to the Malnad Ultra as well. She's been a good mom to all the trail runners in India. So thank you, Mom, for giving us some beautiful trails and exciting trails and challenging routes to run. We're excited to speak with Anand. You guys who are watching, have any of you all run the race? Have you run all editions of the race? Have you run a edition of the race? Which distance have you done? Have you done the 50, 80, or 110? We'd love to know. We'd love to hear from you, and maybe you can put it in your comments. Let's see a show of hands for those who are live, who've run every single edition of the Malnad Ultra. There's Vijayan. So he says hi Vijayan. Happy Mother's Day to you as well. I know Vijayan has probably run every single edition. Is that right? Vijayan, am I right? You've probably done I think you did the 80 year one, and then I think thereafter you've done the 110 every single year.
I think we'd also love to hear what are your most fond memory of Malnad, if you've ran the Malnad Ultra, since it's been there for 4 years now. I certainly have a fond memory of Malnad back in 2016, which was the first edition. That was my first Ultra. So it's definitely close to my heart, and I cherish that first edition of Malnad.
Yep, same here. 80K first year, had never done a 50 before that. No, I don't think so. Was Javadu after that?
It was after that.
Yeah, so I'd never done a 50. But yep, 80K first year. I remember taking a nap in the middle of the night, and then walking gingerly to the finish. Yeah, there he is. There's Vijay, and he says all 110 every year. Hey, Apu's here as well. He says Vijay and I 110 all 4 years. Last year done 80. Waiting eagerly for this one. Yeah, we're waiting as well for this year. Hopefully, who knows? We'll let Anand announce that, if it's on or not, or what his plans are. He says the best one was the first one and the one last year, Vijayan. Yeah, Vijayan, I think so too. I think the first one was awesome because of it being the first one, so no one really knew what we were in for. And I loved the start because it was way up, and then the first, I think, 8 or 10K was all downhill, and then we got, or was it? Yeah, and I think at 30K we got to the 50K aid station, which was the start for the next couple of years. And then last year was a surprise change as well.
I would definitely second that as well. That I definitely the first edition was my favorite of all. I think that was my first Ultra, and also I think the atmosphere was a little different. Trail running was just coming into India, and it was also a much smaller rate, smaller in terms of amount of participants. So it was very, very nice. I remember at the starting line of the 50K, there were only about 5 women back then for the 50K, and it was very, very fond memories of that. And then last year, I signed up for the 50K, even though knowing that I wasn't most likely going to finish it because I had not trained for it. But it was still a lot of fun because it was a completely new course, and we got to see different parts of the Malnad Ultra and got to see a new viewpoint, which we had not been exposed to before. So that was very nice. And then again, there was a lot more elevation this time, so that we had to work a lot harder this year around. So that made it more challenging, and plus it was a lot more muddy this year. I remember that many were sort of tenderly running down the trail, and maybe it was their first trail run, so people weren't used to having to run in mush, and maybe they were scared of the leeches also. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, but I think from all the editions, if I had to repeat, any one of them, it would definitely be the first year experience, for sure. Right. Let me try and get in touch with Anand. I'm not sure where he is. I did see him connect a couple of seconds ago, and then he's disappeared. So I think he may have some difficulty. You know, he's been living in isolation for the last couple of decades. I think he lives on a beautiful farm. He has a private trail. So who knows, he may have just gone out for a run and said, screw the show. Let me give him
somebody, Sunil saying slushy. Yes, that's how it was last year. Slushy. But it's a lot of fun. I feel like it's a lot more challenging when you have different conditions and the trail is not so dry, and it's you just kind of enjoy the moment and go with whatever is there and go with the flow.
Live chat.
So yeah, I haven't ran the 110K before. I've only done the 50K and the 80K, and I definitely really enjoy the 50K distance. And hopefully next year, if it's not this year, next year around, definitely will do the 50K once again, just because I really enjoy that distance. Yeah.
Yep. I just had a chat with Anand. He says he's in. There he is.
I think he's coming.
Yeah. Okay, Anand, I see you. Finally. All right, guys. Let me quickly introduce Mr. Anand over here, and then we'll bring him in for all of you for the pleasure of chatting with the one and only Anand Adkoli. All right. So Anand retired in 2008 after spending 22 years in the international software industry. He is now internalizing how nature is at the very heart of everything, and strongly believes that the manner in which our species has constructed the modern world is leading us to extinction in the next few generations, sadly. He spends his time farming on local trails and on a few other very random projects. He says building endurance by running has helped him become a better person. You know, the Malnad Ultra's first edition was in 2016, of which both Monica and I have very fond memories, as do many of you. And yeah, 4 successful editions on, it's grown into the largest ultra in the country. So, yep, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Anand Adkoli. Hey.
Hi, Anand.
Hey. Good to see you.
So I've been waiting for this. No horns, please, Anand. That's the rule. That's the rule of the day.
Yeah, I could only wear one T-shirt today. You know, I thought of wearing that, but then I decided, I got to stay close to my brand. So yeah. I guess it's out of the frame, so I should hold my T-shirt the entire 1 hour now. So
everyone recognizes the face. That's the Malnad Ultra. So
I see your hair is a little longer.
Yeah, you know what? At this age, I'm glad my hair is still growing. It's been it's been 30 years maybe since I had hair this long.
Wow. Yeah, we usually see you with a much shorter cut.
Yeah, we see him in his game face, game cut, so to say. Yeah, sure. Yeah. That's why he doesn't have to worry about too many other things. So anyway, Anand, how's life? I know you're on a farm, self-sustaining farm, but has the lockdown sort of changed anything for you at all?
It's been actually for me nice. I know it's rude for me to say this, but in some sense, I was already probably close to this lockdown kind of a life for the last few years. Yeah. So, the one thing that's sort of better, I should say, is, and I know my kids won't like this, but some of their activities in the summer, unfortunately, got canceled. So they're at home and we don't have to drive them anywhere. So that's actually been good for us. Yeah. The other thing, I guess one sort of downside, if you can say that, is, are the people who sort of helped us on the farm. They had to go home and, essentially be with their families. So they've not been around for the last 5-6 weeks. So, running farm, there's some stuff that you have to do every day. It needs to get done whether you like it or not. So can't complain. So I've got into this routine and, average 5-6 hours a day on the farm. I think I'm certainly stronger from that. So can't complain about that too. And, I know you have been on my private running trail next to my farm. So
Yeah.
it doesn't affect me that much.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that along with all of us, at least there's one thing in common. While all of us are in a lockdown, we've been focusing on strength work, and it seems like you have been doing that as well with a couple hours of farm work. So yeah, it's nice that.
I envy you. I mean, the fact that you have your farm and you're able to get out and actually do stuff outside, I think that's. I wish I could do that. I mean, I grew up on a farm, so it's definitely brings a lot of memories back. Well, it's very difficult to be within four walls and kind of get used to that life, and it's been a little draining towards the last few weeks that we've not been able to really go out and enjoy nature and be with nature.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. My point of view was completely selfish. I understand that. I know that this put millions of people into not just trouble but misery. So I've been lucky.
Yeah. Anand, the Malnad Ultra. When did it all begin?
Actually, I think the first conversations started somewhere in 2014, maybe even 2013. I don't fully recall, but the Malnad Ultra is actually equally owned by a guy called Sham. I know some of you have met him. He sort of remains in the background. So Sham and I went to La Ultra in Ladakh, and I can't recall. Maybe it was 2013 or 14, and you sort of we crewed for a 333 runner. And that was sort of the time, while Leh is beautiful and all of that, and we saw some of the best amateur runners at that event. Personally, apart from the great moon landscape in Ladakh and all of that, personally I felt that was not such a great experience, simply because it was a road run, and at the end of the day, there's only so much, at least for me personally. I mean, I don't like running on asphalted roads too much. And so running with traffic, and there was a couple of military convoys, and there was a lot of traffic on some stretch of that La Ultra. So at that point in time, Sham and I actually talked to Rajat, who is a good friend. And we discussed the idea of starting an ultra down in the south, given that the La Ultra is sort of a niche event. And, at that time, I think there were only like 20 runners, if I remember that edition. So we wanted to do something south in the Western Ghats, which is basically a lot of greenery, a fantastic landscape. So we sort of talked to Rajat about, the possibility of conducting an event down here south, and Sham and I actually offered to help him put that event together. But I think most of you probably have run into Rajat at some point, so it was kind of hard to move that conversation beyond a point. So it stalled, right? It stalled for a few months, and then one fine day, as I think many of these stories begin by accident. I was sitting for a cup of coffee with a dear old friend of mine, Siddharth. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. So, he was intrigued by the fact that there are people out there who actually want to go and run these long distances. And, within a few minutes, like a couple of minutes, so the conversation started with, hey, Siddharth, some of us want to go and run. Can you sort of give us some access to your estates so we can run in within the estates and probably stay over for the night? And the next thing, within a couple of minutes, he turned it around and said, why don't you organize an event? All the estates that we have in that area, I'll make it available to you, and just go and organize the run. So that's how the run actually started. This would have been 2014, late 2014. So we started planning somewhere in 2015. Early 2015, as I remember.
Yeah. So I mean, your intention was to just take a couple of friends, go spend the weekend, have a long weekend, and run around. And the next thing you know, it comes to a conversation on creating a race and making it this boutique event, which has now grown into a mega event. why did you decide to take that conversation forward? Why didn't you just turn around and say, no, I don't want to race, I just want to, were you eager to start something? What was the thinking behind just taking a small bunch and going and running versus getting all of us out there, I guess?
There's actually two parts to it, right? So one is, from my personal standpoint, I've always sort of enjoyed being close to nature. And this may sound a bit like the Life of Pi story, but I don't know if you know this, maybe some of my friends do know this. My dad used to work for the forest department. So growing up, I've spent an enormous amount of time close to wildlife. So I spent a few years, my dad used to be the director of Delhi Zoo. And I spent a few years living inside the Delhi Zoo. No, I wasn't caged, but I used to, our house was inside the Delhi Zoo premises. So I have vivid memories even today of being close to wild animals in the zoo, if you can call them wild. So I remember, feeding elephants, feeding tigers. I actually even had the privilege to, go inside a cage and feed tigers. So I have some really vivid memories. So as I grew up and, my dad we came back to Bangalore, he used to take all these trips to the forest areas because he worked for the department. And whenever we had holidays or, I guess on some occasions, I even bunked school because he always made it a point to take us with him, my sister and me. So I must have been like 11 years old. I'm digressing a little bit, but this is a good story for people out there. So I must have been about 11, and in those days there were no motorbikes and jeeps going through forest. There used to be trails, and everything that you did, you had to walk. I'm talking maybe 1975, 76, just to give you guys a feel. I don't think any of you were born at that time, but, different story. So we were on this, day-long hike, and we basically had to make it to a specific guest house, a forest guest house, which was, a whole day of hiking. And en route, we were three of us. So there was a forest guard, my dad and I. We were walking along, and we came across a single tusker in the wild. This is the Bandipur Wildlife Forest. So, and somehow we had all missed it. I mean, I of course didn't know what to look for. I was still a rookie. So we sort of broke helter skelter. We ran. Thankfully nothing happened. So about 10, 15 minutes later, we sort of congregated again. Three of us had actually split up. And my dad was probably more reckless than me, so it didn't bother him that his 11-year-old son was sort of running around on his own. It just didn't seem to bother him. So after we got together, we sort of hiked all the way back to the lodge in the evening. And he said, Anand, next time an elephant chases you, very calmly, right? Remember to run downhill and zigzag. So that was, in a way, my initiation into trail running, if you will, right? So anyway, I digress. Coming back to why the Malnad Ultra started, yes, we wanted to start an event. When I say we, I mean at that stage it was Sham and me. So we wanted to start an event which was a trail run. We were very clear that we were going to conduct a trail run, and the reason for that is there were two or three reasons. First and foremost, every trail run that at least I knew of in 2014, 15, people had to go abroad to get a good trail experience. So I knew many of my friends in Bangalore who sort of spent a good amount of money, went abroad to Europe or wherever just to experience a trail run. And I'm like, having seen all the forest areas and the Western Ghats, 4-5 hours from Bangalore, I'm like, why do you have to go that far? It should be possible to conduct a really good experience, just here in India, right?
Yeah.
So that was sort of probably the key reason. My own experience, I'd gone to what is called the Bangalore Ultra in those days. I've run KTM probably 3 or 4 times. And these were masquerading, with no offense to A1 and A2, they were masquerading as trail runs. And I'm like, how can this be a trail run? It's just sort of, it's a mud trail, but that's pretty much it. So that's how we wanted to conduct a run. And, being a unemployed graduate, I have plenty of time on my hands. And then, this conversation with Siddharth happened, and we said, hey, let's do this event. I mean, what better opportunity to sort of get an event like this started? We've had a few twists and turns. Unfortunately, Siddharth's no longer with us, but we are committed. This is something three of us started, and I think I owe it to him, or we owe it to him, just to keep this running. So we will do whatever possible to keep this legacy.
Yeah, I don't think you digressed with your elephant story. I think it's very relevant. Two things stood out. One is you said you were running helter skelter in the forest, and that's what I think 850 of us did at the race last year. And then the second was what your father said. Run downhill and run zigzag, and that immediately reminds me of the switchbacks, which are so famous on your course, especially at the start when we're running on road. The first couple of, I think, 4 or 5K, there's a couple of switchbacks, and the photographers are very well positioned behind the pine trees, and the beautiful images that are on the site as well. So yeah, it's nice that you've taken that advice. We haven't seen any tuskers, but it's nice that you've taken that advice.
So when you were leading up to 2016 for your first edition of the Malnad Ultra, what was your vision? What did you want out of that first edition?
So I think the first edition, we wanted to bring runners close to nature. I know many people talk about coming close to nature, but we felt that our course had all the ingredients, X factors, if you will. I mean, the weather there is fickle. Some of you have come multiple years. I mean, you really don't know what weather you're going to get on event day. Second, the terrain is awesome. You get some fantastic views. The course itself, we have the luxury of getting quite a bit of shade. I was listening to Vijayan yesterday, who was talking about shade. Other than like 10 minutes in those pine forests or whatever they call it, I don't remember any tree taller than me on the Wagamon.
You should have run the fun run this year. There's shade. There's this. It's all very covered and cold, and anyway, you can.
Yeah. So I was telling Vijayan I couldn't find a single tree more than 6 feet tall. I don't know what he was talking about, other than the stretch on that pine stretch or whatever they call it. Anyway, so the terrain is beautiful, plenty of shade. There are some fantastic jungle trees, and for people who sort of want to just experience that, listen to the birds, the crickets, I mean, it's an experience that you won't get anywhere else. The third part of it, of course, was the wildlife. Luckily, we haven't sort of encountered any large wildlife on event day, simply because the rains have come in and the animals are spread out. But let me tell you that on the Malnad course, during the recce and route marking, we have seen wildlife up close and very close. So there's certainly plenty of wildlife. So there's X factors there. So we felt that a combination of this actually would provide an experience like none other in India. So most of the ultras, even today, that happen, other than Wagamon and some things, events that CTC puts together, up north, the weather is cold. Most of these events happen in the cold. So this is a different sort of, I won't say it's humid, but it's certainly warmer weather. Yeah. But it has, people who sort of want to experience nature up close, especially if you are running in the night sections, the longer distances, and you're by yourself on that course, I'm sure many of our runners discover themselves during our event. Many have told me this. Yeah.
And I'm sure you and the team discover many dead bodies along the way as well. But
we've been lucky. I mean, I don't know if people have sort of got lost or died on the course, but we haven't found any as yet. So Yeah, but I just want to go back a few minutes. I think that would have been a good excuse last year. When people told me they got lost on our course, the elephants took away the signs. So that's what happened.
There you go. Now you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
But coming back to year one, I remember when we first spoke. I think I came across an article or a post, I believe, on Facebook that spoke about the event, and this is, I think, easily 6 months or 5 months before the first edition. I remember getting in touch with you, calling you and saying, "Hey Anand, I'm so and so from Bombay. This is what I do. I heard about the race, da da." And then of course, we got along and we started. But running the first edition, seeing recovery mix at the aid stations, telling the volunteers, "Hey, call Anand, something's messed up." What were some of the initial sort of challenges, as an organizer that you faced, even though you had access to the estates, which is great, but I'm sure there were a lot of challenges which you've had to overcome. So just from a race director's perspective, because people are watching our participants, of course, apart from Vijayan and Soldier coaching, but the rest are participants. So can you tell us, some of the challenges that you face as a race director, especially in year one, and then
even
how
last year, I think
Yeah,
year,
well-
because of what happened, you had to, change the trail a bit. So, what are the challenges that you do face as a race director?
yeah. So last year, I'll come to last year a little bit later, but I think there are probably 4 or 5 challenges which are unique, and some of these challenges are not going away anytime soon. Regardless of what we do, these challenges will remain. Now, I want to be very careful. I mean, I don't want the audience to sort of think we're cribbing. We love to put this event together, but as a race director, I'm not the kind of guy to make excuses. We do our best. Yes, some things fall apart. Especially last year, we didn't do very well. But this should not be sort of coming across as excuses, but there are obvious challenges. So the first challenge is, because our event happens in private estates, we have to massage a lot of egos. Though we get a buy-in from the owner of the estate or owners of the estate, the people on the ground, the managers, the local sort of workers, there's a lot of egos and territorial battles that we have to deal with. Especially in an event, in the course we used last year, because we used estates that belong to multiple owners. You're not just massaging one ego, but you're massaging several egos. So to a point where you're doing something in the run up to the preparation, you hit the border or the boundary of the neighboring estate, and this guy will tell you, "Sorry, we can't go any further because that's not my area. This is where I sort of disengage." So the first one, the first and probably the most challenging to handle, it requires a lot of, I guess, people management, right? We're dealing with a few hundred egos at multiple levels. So that's the first. And we cannot do without these people, because at the end of the day, they know the terrain, they know the local area much better than we do. And the moment they decide that they don't want to support our event, it's time for us to pack up and leave. So we have to keep them happy, right? The second one is, and I think Vijayan and his team probably face something similar. Our course is spread out over such a long area, and many of those areas are not reachable by a jeep, right? So it does 2 things. I mean, because we have to actually travel so much to put the event together. The second part of it, because there's no network, we actually have no ability to communicate with anybody down the line. So the lack of network for me is a great thing, because it adds to the experience. But at the same time, if something goes wrong or something goes bad down the line, I mean, we actually have no idea, right, what is going on. So that sort of creates its own challenges. The third part is related to the second. We've been really lucky. I mean, our core set of volunteers, just like Vijayan was saying yesterday, most of our volunteers have sort of come back every year. They're now close friends. We are a pretty tight-knit team. Most of them once they sort of leave at 4 o'clock in the morning on event day, I have absolutely no idea what is going on with whatever they're doing. So there's a lot of decentralization. Pretty much every volunteer owns a specific function, and we have to rely on their judgment, their maturity, so to sort of do the right thing if something goes out of the plan. So I think the lack of network and lack of communication is a pretty huge challenge, right? The third one, again, is related to the first one, which is, so when we actually do the course recce, the first few trips, we're sort of relying on the local estate folks to sort of show us around and tell us, use this path or use that path or whatever. But, as race director, what I always sort of think about is, we've sort of got a certain profile for the Malnad Ultra, if you know what I mean. I mean, people almost now expect certain challenges when they come to the Malnad Ultra. So, this is not to say that we want to make it difficult for the runners intentionally or whatever, but we do want to throw challenges which are unique and probably a little bit more than other events. So the terrain that we pick, we make sure that the gradients are necessarily part of it. We make sure there's a certain amount of ascent and descent. Then, of course, the weather gods throw in the slush and everything else, the leeches and whatever else. So that's beyond our control. But yeah, coming back to your question, I think those are the two sort of main challenges. So working with, even though about 30 of us control the event on event day, for almost 5-6 months, we are sort of working with at least 100 people, who all, ultimately it's human ego, right? So they all want to sort of help the event, they feel, but you have to sort of take them along with you. That coupled with the fact that access is a problem, mobile access as well as transport access, it really makes it challenging. I mean, especially now, let me come to last year just for a moment, since it is connected. So unfortunately, Siddharth sort of chose to do whatever he did last July. And because of that, literally 30 days before our last year's event, we were called to Coffee Day and they told us, sorry, we cannot support your event this year. This was 30 days before race day. So we have already got our registrations done. People have sort of done all their training. Rooms have been booked. People have booked their tickets. And Sham and I are sitting and saying, what now, right? All the estates sort of were closed and we didn't have any access. But we sort of cut through all the noise and came to one definite, I should say, statement, which is we owed it to our community. People were looking forward to this event, 6-7 months of training, all the reservations, money that's gone in. But end of the day, we said it's not right for us to pull out of the event. That would have been an easy way out for us. It wouldn't have made a difference financially to us. And end of the day, probably people would have absorbed it. But we said, no, we'll stick it out. Let's sort of do the event. Considering that people had already made their plans to come to Balavara, all the reservations and stuff. And, the event is called the Malnad Ultra. So we can't say, guys, we'll host it somewhere else, right? It has to be in the Malnad area. So we sort of literally spent the last 4 weeks getting, in touch with other local estates and patched together an event because we wanted to preserve the experience. So both of you talked about the first edition where we made people run down the hill from Kemangundi on a public road. We could have done that quite easily, but we said, no, we owe it to our community to create a trail event and preserve the Malnad experience. So we sort of did that. And last year, the rains were just incredible. Literally, till the night before, it rained every day, and we had absolutely no option. The very few places we could actually travel on a jeep. Much of the aid stations actually happened on foot. So for some of you runners who are out there, I know some of you felt that you ran out of, we ran out of oranges, or you didn't have enough water, or whatever happened, right? Through the night, we were actually carrying water cans to those aid stations. So in the background, all of that's happening. right? But yeah, we enjoyed doing this, and I'm really grateful for the team that we have. Every one of them is now a personal friend, a great friend, and of course, we get a lot of support. I mean, two of you have supported us from day one. So we'll keep this going and enjoy doing it. I think end of the day, for all of us, if it's not fun, we'll stop doing it.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I had a question around last year's event, but I think you've sort of covered all of it. And I'm sure there are challenges, especially with what happened with respect to Siddharth. So we understand. I think the community at large understands, and I think the community at large also appreciates the efforts that you guys made. It's so easy, right? It's so easy for you to just call everyone or email everyone and say, hey guys, I'm sorry, but here's a rain check for this year, we'll see you again next year. That was the easy way out. But as you said, this is something you're passionate about. This is something you owe to the community. You wanted continuity, and we even now, I'm sure a lot of people will never know the sort of I can't say feathers you pulled out of the cap or tricks you pulled off your sleeve, but just the things the magical decisions, last minute decisions, split second decisions that help you cut through all the stuff and just get it done. So you must have probably been on pure execution mode, nothing else. But yeah, it was definitely a challenging race last year. It was a very challenging course.
Yeah,
and I enjoyed the course as well.
I think I enjoyed it a lot because it was a change from the previous years, and just not knowing what to expect. It brings that discovery and just taking it all in, and especially the new surroundings. And then when you did go through certain areas that were a little bit similar or that were the actual from the previous route, you just kind of take it all in. And then when the challenge, I think for the 50K, doing the 50K previous years, we all knew that the last 10 kilometers of that distance, you have a uphill.
Yeah.
But that you can, I don't know, I think it was a little bit more of a gradual uphill.
Yeah.
And then this time around, that major uphill was sort of earlier on, and it was a much steeper uphill. I remember going up and I was like, I planned it that I took a gel just before we started that big ascent. And I was like, thankfully I took a gel there because it was challenging, definitely.
Yeah. Anand, 2016, couple of hundred people, and then last year, 3 or 4 times that size. The race has definitely grown leaps and bounds. Lots of participants from India, a lot of international participants, a lot of elite runners, world elite runners who have come and raced and set course records and finished the race in great time. Is this what you envisioned when you began?
Yes and no. I mean, I think we are still very much focused on providing a great experience to Indian amateurs. It's great to have international runners, especially elites, but most of our focus is on the majority of our runners who are actually not competing for time, if you know what I mean, right? For many of these people, just to finish is a great experience. So we want to first.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm stopping you there. I'm glad you said that because a sort of a follow through that comes straight to my mind is beyond 42, because that's something you've always said. So when you talk about getting amateur Indian runners to finish without a specific time, it comes in really well with your beyond 42 mantra. So yeah, maybe you can sort of touch upon that as well in your.
Yeah, I mean, most of my life, especially, my first event was in 1992, if I remember correctly, the San Francisco Marathon. Ever since I ran the first time, I mean, I've never been about time. I mean, this sounds like an excuse to say, guys, I'm not fast, I'm not competing with anybody. But till date, touch wood, I don't have a DNF. And most of sort of my running I do because I love I love looking around and seeing what's happening, and that's why I don't like the city run so much. But coming back to what I was saying, I think majority of our runners, in a way, we have built a brand, or people expect a difficult course when they come to the Malnad Ultra. But for us, just the look on the face of a finisher, regardless of what distance, an amateur runner, first-time finisher on a 50, 80, or 110 on our course, the look says it all. I mean, many people have sort of gone delirious by the time they hit the finish line. They come and hug me and they're like, man, what a finish. I mean, what a course, right? So for us, I think it's still about that. Yes, we certainly appreciate all the good runners, the fast runners, elite runners coming, and we hope they do come back. But ultimately, I recognize that that's just a small population. Majority of the people still are the weekend warriors, if I can use that term. So these are people, we want them to remember this event for life, even if they come once. I've taken a random sampling and many have cursed me, but most people who have come to the Malnad, and especially the guys who have run in the night, are not going to forget that experience in their life. I think ultimately that's the biggest sort of, what do you call, pat on our back, if I can say that. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, we're all dealing with COVID-19 right now. But if we talk about the course, we've had 3 different courses for the race. We had the course on the first year, and then we had the same course year 2, 3, and 4.
4 is
year 2 and 3, and then last year we had a different course. So we've had 3 different courses. What had you planned, or what have you planned for the next edition, whether it's this year or next year?
Yeah. So the first year, like I said, I mean, we didn't know any better, right? So based on what we knew, we said we'll start from Kemangundi, because that was a place where there was, I think there were 80 rooms. And we said that's a good place to start, because when people come and finish, they have access to their room. So that was probably the only reason why we started in Kemangundi. But then we realized, hey, we're making people run on a cement road. And, this is not something that's good. I mean, especially, when you've been on your feet all day, running up a cement road is not good for your legs. So we said, let's get more trail. So year 2 and year 3, we sort of used a course which was pretty much the same. But the idea was to eliminate as much of public road as possible and get as much trail as possible. So I think that's what we did in years 2 and 3.
Yeah.
The trade-off, of course, was we had to bus people all the way to Lalbagh, which was an hour's journey up and down. But that's something we can't avoid. Last year, we were forced into a change. I mean, if Siddharth was around and things would have been as they were, we would have still sort of used at least 90% of the course similar to years 2 and 3. So because Siddharth sort of is no longer with us, and we couldn't get access to the Coffee Day estates, last year was a forced change. So it's not something we would have done. Certainly, we would have not done. And I think Monica was wondering, but if I remember, only about 6 kilometers of last year's course, the public road where you first entered into the coffee estate, that was the only stretch that was common. Otherwise, everything else was brand new.
Yes.
So we spent a lot of time after last year's event introspecting, of course, and we all agreed that, and when I say we, our entire team of volunteers, we all agreed that we will come out of last year's not so great experience and come up with a better event. So we're very clear we want to do the event in the Malnad area, because that's where the true experience is. We've actually identified a new location. There is a town called Sakleshpur, which is, for people who know, it's still about 4 hours from Bangalore. Now, for people who have some orientation, the Western Ghats run approximately north to south. And the eastern side of the Western Ghats slope is where our old course used to be. So this year, we've actually identified an area which is on the western side. of the same ghats. So everything is same, similar views, similar experience, similar gradients, slush, leeches, rain, all of that is still there. But the one thing different is there's not as much of coffee on this side. That's just the way it is, right? We have identified a new area, and we had actually just, I myself had done 3 trips just to sort of get the early recce in February and March. We had locked down the agreement with the estate owner. We've also announced dates for this year. And if all goes well, this will now remain a permanent home. It definitely helps to have a permanent home and a somewhat permanent course, because then you can actually compare and grow and get better from one year to the next as organizers as well as runners. I mean, you can't compare how a runner did last year with how he did in the 3rd edition, for example, right? So we've identified a location. Again, great people to work with. The chemistry is good. We were all set to sort of go and to mark a course, and we had actually announced that we'll open registrations in April, and then the COVID happened. So now things are on hold. So that's actually something I want to come back to. I don't know how many people are watching this chat, but I actually want to hear from what some of the runners have to say. I mean, we have a few options on how we can pull this event off this year. Of course, if the lockdown continues and this COVID thing doesn't go away for, let's say, the next 3-4 months, then it would be difficult for us to host the event. But we are bullheaded, and we'll do everything possible to get the event off. But from my point of view, I've already had a few chats internally. We have a few options, but we're quite clear that we don't want to cancel the event. I mean, as much as possible, we will conduct the event regardless of what happens, right? Unless some government regulation stops us from doing so, then all bets are off. We will open registrations when the government says it's okay to sort of open up. So we'll see when that happens. Now, 2 things are obviously happening, right? The clock is ticking. As we get closer to November, there's less time for training, less time for people to prepare their logistics. So we are already now little over 5 months, or if I'm doing the math correctly. So I think it would be unfair to have a long distance. I mean, we had actually planned a 100-miler this year, which I've talked to some of you about. But I don't think we can even consider a 100-miler this year, because there's no way people would be able to train for something like that. So, the categories that we offer, that's one thing we could change. So, for example, if people get only 3 months of training, we may only end up with a 50 or a 60K distance, because it would not be possible for people to train for longer distances. So that's one thing that we have to sort of wait and watch. But we have a location, we have a course. The only thing that's different about this course is instead of coffee, you'll see tea plantations for the most part. And what that means, of course, is there's not much shade, but it's nowhere as close, nowhere as warm as Wagamon. It's much cooler, low 20s even in November. But here is an X factor. The rain on the western side of the Western Ghats is actually 3 times more. So just to give you a feel, the area that we are planning our run last year got 600 inches of rain in the monsoon. I know Monica is raising her eyebrows. This 3 times more than where we normally do our run. So what will happen is the monsoons typically come in the 2nd week of May, 3rd week of May in that area. And once the monsoon comes in, pretty much nothing can happen, because you can't move around those areas, right? Yeah. And it'll put, we'll have to wait for the weather to clear up a bit. In between the southwest monsoon and the returning monsoon, we'll get a few weeks. So that's probably where we'll have to do our course planning. Also in monsoon, the wildlife in this area is much more. We've already sort of seen elephant dung and those kinds of things in the 3-4 visits that we've done. So the monsoon, the estate owner themselves, they're very clear that they cannot, we cannot even enter the estates in the monsoon, because nobody goes into these areas in the monsoon. So we'll see how things turn out. But touch wood, we'll do whatever we can to sort of put this event together. But reality is we will need a 3 or 4 week window of decent weather to put the course together. So the first thing that needs to happen is the government needs to sort of ease down on the regulations, and they have to say, okay, things can sort of move along. Second, we need a window of clear weather. So, but what I want to hear from the people who are watching, there's also a sort of sensitivity to the situation.
Right.
With all the millions of people who are sort of going through all their hardships, people have lost livelihood. There's poverty, hunger, all of these things. Our event really is insignificant, right? But at the same time, we feel that it'll probably be a good outlet, at least for the running communities, to sort of come out and it's a release of energy, release of good energy. So pulling out of the event, in that sense, is not great. And even if we do the event, we still have to figure out the financial side, because most of the sort of companies or partners that support us, I don't know what shape they will be in by the time the COVID thing settles down, whether they can support us or not. So we'll have to figure out how we sort of conduct the run, because we have to remain neutral financially. So worst case, we'll have to transfer that burden on the runners. So our registration fees will probably double or whatever that turns out to be.
Yeah,
but if we do the event, one thing that I'm considering is we definitely want to figure out some way where we can keep a component of our registration fees and give back to the community that sort of faced hardships in COVID. So it could be in the area where we conduct the event, or we'll figure something out. But I'm certainly keen to do something out of this event for the community. It doesn't make sense for us to just conduct an event and some of us to have a good time and come back. But this is something I'd love to hear feedback from the people who are watching.
Yeah, I think that's great. There are a lot of people watching. There are a lot of runners who have run the Malnad Ultra who are watching, and I can see the comments in the chat box over here. So yeah, guys, what are your thoughts? Would you be open to traveling? Say things open up. We're in May, June, July. Say by around July end or August, things begin to open up. Trains are running, flights are running, and say Anand says, okay, we have a race in November. Training aside, regardless of whether you've been able to train enough or not, it's never enough. You can always, you can keep training. But regardless of all of that, would you be comfortable? I guess that's what Anand's question is. Would you be comfortable traveling? Would you be comfortable taking the train from Bangalore to Birur? And as we know, both 2 or 3 bogies are just packed with runners, all of us. So is that something you're comfortable doing? We may see a change in the registration. Yeah, Anand.
I have to stop you for a moment. Please don't make reservations to Birur. This is an entirely new location, so there's a new before people go out and start booking.
I'm sure they can't make reservations right now. I'm sure everything's still closed. But point being, is everyone comfortable traveling? Are you guys open to sort of coming to the race? And while you think about that and an answer, I have another thing that. Go ahead.
I had it's kind of related to Anand's question on, what ideas or what is the willingness of people to participate in the race. As a race director, have you thought about maybe cutting down the numbers of participants for the race this year, just so there's not a big crowd, depending on, we don't really know the severity or how bad the COVID is going to be there at that time, and just to mitigate any, more of social distancing and all of that.
Yeah.
Yes, I have thought about it, but the fact is, other than the travel, I think social distancing is only an issue in the start and finish area. Once people are on the course, I don't see social distancing as an issue. Anyway, I don't see people running with a mask on. That doesn't make sense. So,
Yeah.
So probably the start and finish, we'll have to figure out how to do it. But no, Monica, I don't think I'm sort of thinking more of I'm thinking more along the lines of reducing the distances, considering that the training period is much lesser. But numbers, I think, I leave it open, because already I expect lesser numbers this year, because I don't think as many people would want to travel immediately after this COVID thing, either, for personal reasons, or, for just, scare of health issues or whatever. So I don't expect, this suddenly to be an event where 5,000 people show up. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. Maybe one distance, maybe just the 50 or the 50 and the 80. But I guess you can take that call whenever the time is right. As far as what people would like to do, yeah, there's some people commenting over here. Let me see. So Vijuj is here. He says, yes, we will be comfortable. Vijayan is here. He says, absolutely, if the government allows us to travel. Mahesh, by November, things should have settled down. Nilendu's here. He says, as long as there are no government restrictions, the race should happen. Any sort of sports always relieves the stress of a pandemic or any other stressful event. Yeah, and that ties in with what you said. It's a celebration. I'm sure people will see it as a chance to just let loose and let free. All right. Here's a comment on registration fees. He says, personally, I feel increasing registration fees should be done given the current situation and lesser sponsorships. And then again, that's something that, the race directors will decide at the right time. Okay, Praveen is here. He says, let's be extra cautious in terms of safety. Otherwise, if things settle down, we're good to go. Definitely waiting for it. Everything else is positive. Here's a question from C Guru. He's like, how is the qualification criteria going to be measured? As most may not have a finish with the lockdown and no races. Yeah, so that's a great question, Anand. Are you going to need certificates, recent certificates from people?
So we've always actually not required certificates. I mean, our standard approach has been that people, firstly, we ask for qualification criteria just so that we know our runners know what to expect. This is not for us to gauge, whether a runner is prepared for the event. My take is, my view has always been, we want our runners to know what they're getting into. So we've always sort of been clear on the way we do our criteria. People who have come to our event in previous years, you automatically qualify. It doesn't matter if you finished or not, and that will certainly remain. We may not let you run the longer distances, but certainly the entry-level distance. If you have come and seen our event, you know what to expect, and that's what you're going to get. So as long as you know what you're going to expect, I'm going to leave the preparation to the runner. It's not for me to tell people how they get ready for this, right? The second thing that I want to mention is we have actually never required events. What we require is people to demonstrate that they are training or they are trained. So we are quite happy accepting people's training records. We're quite happy accepting a Strava record or something from the Garmin or whatever, or any of those applications. So we don't really require people to produce an event certificate, right? So yes, some people sort of, have asked me, but, aren't people cheating? But if somebody wants to cheat and come to our course, good luck to them. I mean,
yeah. I think at the end of the day, it requires some self-regulation as well. So let's all be honest. If you're not ready, don't sign up for an 80K or a 110 just because your friend is doing it. Because not only does that put you into trouble, but it gives the race organizers a big headache to deal with. Especially if you're lost and they have to send someone looking for you, especially in areas where there's no jeeps and no possibility of sending cars. So please be responsible. I think.
Yeah, sorry, Amit. The good thing is, and I say it's a good thing because every year, as more and more people have come and experienced our event, the word has spread. So I think now many people are telling their friends, don't be crazy. Make sure you prepare for this before you get in. So that's actually a good thing.
Yeah. If there's any more questions, guys, please start putting them in really quickly so we can get them through to Anand before we close. And while you're doing that, I have a question, Anand. So for this new course, you said it's on the western side. You said we can expect more rain, less shade. So more rain, less shade. What about the famous 17K viewpoint? How do
there's
you?
plenty of views. There's plenty of views. I mean, even last year, I remember you asked me that question.
Compensate for the view, the main view? How do you have something else like that planned in the course?
Well, let me ask you this. So last year, did you enjoy the views?
I enjoyed the views every year. I enjoyed the challenge every year, but I do know that even in the pre-race briefing, you emphasize on the 17-kilometer viewpoint. So just for people to know, is there a paragliding viewpoint that we're all going to run past?
So last year we did not go to the 17K viewpoint that we normally used to, but yet people got 3 or 4 good views. And you can trust me. You've known me long enough now. I mean, I certainly will make sure the course is challenging. You'll get your views. You'll probably get some rain. I don't know. I mean, race day, we'll see. But November is supposed to be fairly clear for 2-3 weeks, right? So you will get leeches, you will get wildlife, probably more wildlife on this course. But yeah, I mean, there are plenty of views. I mean, I've already been there, and I think I've shared some pictures already on social media. If I have not, I have some pictures, I have some videos. I'll put it out in the next day or two. You can see the views for yourself. And these shots were taken in summer. So post the monsoon, you can see, you can imagine how much more greenery there will be.
So you're just going to tease people now, is it?
Yeah.
Just to build up the anticipation. I mean, we're already, wanting to get out, and that is just going to add more to the fire too.
I remember last year, when we got the course finally done, Amit actually called me as I was driving back after finalizing last year's course, and he was very concerned. He's like, "Hey man, I've trained. I'm looking forward to this tough Malnad Ultra, and now suddenly you're giving us a new course." I don't remember what my exact comment was, but I told him that this one's going to be harder, or something to that extent. Yeah.
So we have a specific question from Mohan here. He says, "How long before the run would you want to know their training status?" So you refer to just looking at people's training plans.
So we typically require the criteria to come in before at least a month before, 30 days before. And the reason for that is we will not hand out a bib unless the qualification criteria is in. So last year we tried something different. It didn't work so well, but maybe we'll do the same thing. We allowed people to register and then send us the qualification criteria a month before the event. But this year we probably will not do that, because anyway we don't restrict the number of registrations. So as long as you register before the last date and your qualification criteria comes in, that should be good enough. But to answer his question, yeah, I think 30 days before the event.
Okay. Vijayan's here, he's like, "What kind of wildlife?" Yeah, more leeches.
Elephants, he said, leeches.
Vijayan, I'll make sure I come to you in the night.
I think all of us are going to be wildlife by the time we come out. I have a little beard project growing as well, so we're all going to turn into
bears, monkeys.
I'm always guarded when people ask me this. I mean, I have plenty of experience with wildlife, and I know that they're certainly not as threatening as human beings. So all the wildlife that I have seen, as long as you sort of don't approach them or don't threaten them, they'll be fine. But to answer Vijayan's question, there are elephants, tigers, and leopards in this area, right? Let me give you a small sort of statistic. Okay, this estate that we're using has about I'll have to. I don't have my notes in front of me, but it has 20,000 acres, one single estate, and many of these animals are within the boundaries of the estate, and they're always there. So they just move to other areas, when the monsoon happens, but otherwise they're always within the estate.
Yeah. Yeah. Vijay is here. He's like, hey, are we getting a 100-miler this year if it happens at all? Yeah, you answered that earlier, but I'll let you give him a quick answer.
Yeah, I would have loved to. In fact, I'm actually a little disappointed because we've always sort of said that year 5 we'll do a 100-miler. But given how the situation is developing with COVID, I don't think we can do the 100-milers. Even if we put the course together, I think it's just unfair. I mean, there's absolutely, 4 months of training time is not going to get it done.
Yeah.
So we may not do it this year. But this area that we have, you can easily get a single loop of 100 miles easily.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
That would be incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So Vijay, we know
And here's
what,
the other good thing. Amit, sorry to interrupt you. This is 100% trail. It's not even 99%. It's 100% trail.
yeah.
Even better.
Even better. I'm sure Vijay is really happy about that. I'm going to pop his question back up. But at least we know what's in store in the next couple of years. A single loop, 100-miler, all trail. And since you mentioned all trail, I'm going to throw this one in from Mahalakshmi. She's like, will the route be majorly tea estate or do we see different kinds of terrain? So yeah, terrain, is it, you said it's all trail. Do we see a lot of single track? Is it jeep track? What's it like?
So it'll be a mix. That the tea estate will probably be, I'll use 50K for an example, right? So maybe about 10 to 15%, max 20% will be through tea estates. The rest of it will go through what are called shola forests. These are grasslands, grasslands at the higher elevations. And then there's a lot of forest areas. So all the valleys and stuff actually have evergreen forests. Even within the estate boundary, this estate owner has only planted tea in about 15% of the entire area. So there are majority of his estate is still standing forest trees, evergreen forests. So you'll get a mix. The tea area is much like what Vijayan uses for the Vagamon, single path trails. Yes, there are some jeep roads, but I think we'll have probably I'll say 20% of single trails.
Nice. Awesome. Well, it's good to know that you have what you're considering a permanent home. It's good to know that the area sorted out, 20,000 acres, single loop, 100-miler, all trail. There's definitely so much to look forward to for the race, whether it happens this year or next year. Of course, all of us do hope it happens this year, and if it does, I'm sure a lot of us will be there. But that's a call that, of course, we understand you will take at the right time. This brings us to the last part of the show, which is putting Anand on the spot for once. He's going to run a quick fire ultra for all of us after making us run up and down his extended backyard, so to say, last couple of years. So Anand, are you ready?
You didn't tell me about this, man. This is something we just threw in.
So now we have to inform you, is it, so that you prepare, right?
I'm an old man. I need time to prepare. Anyway, I'm just pulling your leg. Go ahead.
Okay, look, we've only learned from you. Throw in the challenges at the last minute on the course. So we're only learning from you, Anand. But yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, of course.
Yeah, we're starting easy. We're just warming up. It's like the beginning of the 50K. You run downhill. Oh, this is going to be a piece of cake, and then boom. Horns or traffic?
What was the first word? Homes?
Honking or traffic?
Oh, honking. Definitely no honking.
Honking or traffic it was, okay.
Honking or traffic. I mean, aren't the two linked? I mean, at least in India, they're linked. Unless you want to drive okay, let's assume I'm driving in the US. I'll take traffic any day. So.
Okay.
Racing or organizing?
Racing.
Okay.
I use racing. I should say running. I've never raced. I run, but I don't race. Okay.
I think we race within ourselves.
Yeah.
Farming or coding?
Oh, farming.
Yeah.
Easy.
Do you have mango trees in your farm?
Oh yes, we have 13 mango trees. The season's a little late, so probably in 3-4 weeks from now, we should have mangoes to eat.
Nice.
Nice. And then, of the 3 courses, the original, the year 2 and year 3, and then last year's course, which one of these 3 would you prefer to run?
Last year's.
Last year's. And any specific distance from last year's course?
I would have loved to run the 110.
Okay.
In fact, most people, some of the guys in our team know this. Last year is the first time I actually trained for an event. I mean, you'll be amazed. Otherwise, my training is whatever I run during the week. But last year, I actually, Eric Orton, this guy who sort of we brought down from the US, he sort of forced me into a training program. So last year, I was actually, I spent 6 months training with Eric, and I was prepared to run the 110 last year. It held me in good stead because I spent a month marking last year's course. But yeah, definitely last year's course.
Yeah, awesome. Great. It's been wonderful, Anand, to speak with you. I think, this weekend has been great with Vijayan yesterday going over Vagamon, and then with you today going over Malnad. Arguably both events are very close to our hearts, and I'm sure very close to a lot of people who are going to watch this, and a lot of trail runners across India. So nice to know more about you, your background, more about the race, plans for this year, or I should not say this year, plans for the next edition, whether it happens this year or next year, whenever it does. We're all excited to see the new course, to experience the new course, more leeches, more challenges, more heat, since you said it's not covered. So all of that thrown into the hat makes a trail runner really happy, I guess. Yeah.
I should correct you a bit. So, only the areas in the tea plantation don't have cover. I told you
so much away. Let us just come and experience. Why are you giving so much away?
Yeah, come and feel it. But thank you for putting this event together. I think you guys are, obviously doing great. You're sort of supporting the community and doing whatever you can in these tough times. I've been listening into a bit of the others. I think what makes me happy is ultimately it's a community. I mean, we are probably 2,000 or 3,000 people community in India today, and most of us at least know each other by face. And just sort of working or experiencing the souls of Cochin yesterday, the CTC gang. I think that's what this is all about. At the end of the day, I think I'm happy because a few hundred of us have sort of built good friendships around this. So I think that's something we should cherish. So the event itself is a celebration. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, of course. And I think for a lot of us, what brought us all together was the first edition at Malnad, was the trails were there. So thank you as well from the whole community for pulling all these crazy people from across the country together under one small little coffee estate, I guess.
Ballavara. We have fond memories of
Yeah. But before we let you go, you said no train to Birur this year. So where is the train to?
Oh, there is still a train. I mean, that's something that we considered as one of our sort of key parameters. I mean, we definitely don't want people to drive.
Right.
So there is a train to Sakleshpur from Bangalore, pretty much same as Birur. You leave early morning from Bangalore and you get to Birur midday, and then you come back the next day. So there is a train service, so no issue. Yeah. Plus, the good thing is there's plenty of accommodation. I mean, unlike Ballavara, there is at least 1,000 homestays in this area because it's a fairly popular destination, much like Vagamon. So there's plenty of accommodation choices, all budgets, all terrain. You can actually get a 5-star accommodation if you want to.
Nice. Awesome.
Well, I'm very excited already. I'm getting definitely eager to experience the new trail, and hopefully keeping our fingers crossed that things get better and we were able to get out and come over and see you in person.
I think you've just turned the key in Monica. I think her training is gonna take a step up from tomorrow.
What it's been like.
Yeah,
Yeah, I heard she is running on a treadmill, so you'll have to get some gradient on the treadmill.
yeah. We'll try.
So how does it work? That you have a button and the treadmill can keep doing this, or how does that work?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. But hey,
Okay.
Thanks so much, Anand. Have a good
Sure,
evening.
thank you.
Thanks everyone else for
Thanks.
tuning in. It's
Yeah,
awesome, all of you.
Thanks for everybody who tuned in. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Yeah.
Before we let you go, we have another week of awesome chats starting Tuesday. So starting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think we have 4 or 5 chats next week. We'll make an announcement soon. So the easiest way for everyone to tune in is just to subscribe to the YouTube channel before you close the window today. Just subscribe and you'll get a notification for the next chat. Train hard, train for the new course, and hope to look out for an announcement from Anand and the team. Just stay tuned to their Facebook page or their Instagram page. We'll leave the links in the description below. We'll leave a link to the Malnad Ultra website as well. So keep an eye on that as well. All righty.
Yeah. And happy Mother's Day once again.
Cheers. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.